Atalofa atu, it's Tufuga here. I'm reporting from here in Brisbane. Just want to do a little discussion regarding the arrival of the Samoan Prime Minister here in Australia, and also to discuss three things. One, the Iranian attack on the US base in Syria. Two, the effects of BRICS throughout the Pacific with regards to AUKUS. And three, the impact of the Ukrainian war and how it will impact upon Asia-Pacific politics and regionalism. Okay, these topics are quite vast and extensive, but first I probably would need to start off by acknowledging the arrival of the Samoan Prime Minister, and also to discuss and analyse her address to the Lowy Institute, which, by the way, I have attended a Lowy Institute, as well as the Evatt Foundation meetings in the past, which might be added. The Lowy Institute would often be considered as the liberal centre right-wing conservative branch of the Australian think tank, and often they would have Australian guest speakers attending CSIS meetings in Washington DC regarding geopolitical and economic international relations matters of concern. And of late, the most important topic of discussion has been the AUKUS alliance, what I call the Anglo-American post-colonial alliance, and holding on to the vestiges of British imperialism or the legacy thereof amongst the Anglo-Celtic, Anglo-American vestiges throughout the post-colonial former British empires, and thus merging the Brexit British with the Commonwealth of Nations, together with Make America Great Britain Again, or MAGA alliance with AUKUS. We know what that is. In terms of our British imperial allegiances, we have AUKUS, and thus we will notice that it will present itself as Brexit, Britain's last vestiges of colonial imperialism, holding on to a disappearing British Commonwealth or British Empire via the Commonwealth Heads of Government, CHOGM, which will now be part of the Samoan purview when they host the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, CHOGM, in 2024 in Apia, Samoa. As you may well be aware, in May, the government of Samoa and all the Commonwealth heads will be attending the ceremonial crowning of the British imperial head of the Commonwealth, albeit King Charles III will be crowned King of the British realm, in which presently Australia, New Zealand are currently the subjects of His Majesty the King of England, which will also remind Commonwealth nations of their imperial head of the Commonwealth. As the Americans are concerned, they've got that Make America Great Again AUKUS affection with Great Britain and their military, Anglo-American military alliances, which, yeah, I must apologise to my wife because she is an American and she is a descendant of her English background from her white Anglo-Saxon Protestant background. So my apologies to her, but I am the product of my First Nations cultural affinity, so I will have an obvious post-colonial pet aversion to anything associated with Anglo-Americanism. But as it is, my in-laws are Anglo-Americans, so you just join the dots there. No disrespect to my in-laws, who also are Samoan descent as well. Now, I apologise for my digression. I often would attend the meetings regarding, well, particularly the Evatt Foundation, which is a centre left-wing political think tank. As a former member of the Australian Labor Party, I would attend many meetings, and on off chance I actually attended the Lowy Institute meetings, but I might remind most viewers up there who are aware of the Lowy Institute that it is a conservative, a right-wing liberal government think tank. So their views are very pro-American and pro-British and pro-AUKUS. So they were teasing out the thought process of the Samoan Prime Minister as she was discussing issues. Now, first and foremost, her topic on AUKUS had been completely shut down when she mentioned the Rarotongan Treaty. By stating the Rarotongan Treaty that was initiated in 1985, the Rarotongan Treaty was an antithesis to the AUKUS nuclear submarine proposition, in which case it would negate the arrival of any nuclear vessels in Samoa as part of the Rarotongan Treaty prescriptions for any Pacific Island signatories, or those who had ratified the treaty conditions, in which case Samoa did that. And Samoa is a party to the Rarotongan Treaty, in which New Zealand had basically broken the ANZUS Treaty in 1985. So the ANZUS Treaty had been cut short and repealed, consequent to the Rarotongan Treaty, in which Prime Minister of Samoa had actually mentioned in her speech addressing the Lowy Institute, and that's like the complete no-no in the Lowy Institute. They do not like the Rarotongan Treaty. Now, she mentioned that, and the Labor government, who are in power at the moment, have right-wing cabal within the Labor government. Very few would regale the Rarotongan Treaty conditions, so that's a completely different generation, and that was during the David Lange administration of New Zealand and the Bob Hawke government of Australia at the time. And during that volatile American-New Zealand relationship, New Zealand had severed ties with America, and America had visited New Zealand with the US Buchanan, but was protested by New Zealanders. Then the French committed a terrorist action when they bombed Rainbow Warrior. That was in 1985. So you had a lot of cans of worms that had transpired from that. Okay, so The Samoan Prime Minister has opened up a can of worms when she reminded everybody of the Rarotongan Treaty. By doing so, she's basically said no to AUKUS for the Samoans. Secondly, she mentioned the three branches of the ethno groups of the Polynesians, Micronesians, and Melanesians, and she stated that the Samoans are prone to be pro-New Zealand because New Zealand is a Polynesian country, as opposed to Australia, which is prone to be more partial towards Melanesian geopolitical matters, such as Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands. And when military matters are concerned, she actually put a forward address to Fiji, which has the predominance of the Central Pacific military branch of the Central Pacific region, apart from New Zealand. So with Fiji having a military presence more so than the Tongan military, which is barely a half a battalion worth of active duty soldiers, Tonga's military presence is very minuscule, although Tonga will be participating in the July Talisman Sabre amphibious military exercise in Shoalwater Bay here in central Queensland, which is a biannual military exercise for the US military to conduct amphibious military joint military training with the Australian Defence Force and other invitees to the Talisman Sabre joint military exercise. Now that occurs here in Queensland, and by there are actually a few casualties from those mock exercises. We've had a lot of people, who have had accidents, and a lot of them have been killed. But anyway, those are for truck crashes and things like that. So apart from those accidents, it's relatively safe. But the Tongans Kingdom military wing branch will be invited to participate in Talisman Sabre 2023. Samoans, when the Prime Minister was asked about AUKUS, she passed on that purview to Fiji, and she said, with regards to AUKUS, I've got nothing to do with it. That's what she said. Well, understandably, because Samoa has no military branch. Tonga does. Samoans, Sino-Samoan relations are relatively good since China had established their embassy in Samoa in 1976. There were talks regarding a more closer economic and even law enforcement and perhaps military visitations to Samoa, and that was talked about. Asau, my village of my parents and my ancestral homeland, was discussed as a likely port of call for a likely Chinese quasi-Tulagi Island base, which was hastily cancelled as a propositional place for a Chinese presence. Now, mind you, I'm going to remind you that Sino-Samoan relations are very, very good, because Samoa has had a very close-knit relationship with the Chinese since the German Samoans had introduced Chinese coolies as indentured labour to work in Vaitele in the DHPG copra plantations. The Kanakas were also, the Melanesians were also brought into Samoa to work on the DHPG copra plantations from the 1890s up till 1914, when New Zealand had conducted the the first New Zealand Expeditionary Force invaded Samoa in 1914, in August 29th, 1914, and invaded my grandpa's village of Apia. My grandpa, I must add, is a descendant of Le Maota Boesi from the Sa Malietoa Talavau ancestry, from the Sa Tuli Tufuga family of Apia. That is my grandfather. And I'm a descendant of the Maota Boesi branch of the Malietoa family. So I am a Malietoa, but my people are from Apia, and it's the Boesi people. So all of the descendants of Le Maota Boesi for Apia are the Sa Tuli Tufuga family, and that's my family. And my mother is the illegitimate daughter of Tauvai Tuli Tufuga, so my acknowledgement for my Sa Malietoa Mele Maota Boesi family. I pay my respects to our family. But my mother was born in Asau, and she's the eldest daughter, illegitimate daughter, from that spurious consummation, in which she was brought up primarily with her mother's side, which is the Tufuga side. Hence, my surname is Tim Tufuga from Asau. My father is from the Sa Amituanai family from Salailua in Paloli area, the Pulenga Lepule of Paloli. So that's in 2018 was the last time I was in Samoa, and I visited my father's grave. But again, that's another digression regarding my heritage, with regards to how Apia has been a centre of historical significance. With regards to 1914, when New Zealand Expeditionary Forces landed on my land. So when New Zealand landed and invaded my land, my ancestral landowners, the Sa Tuli Tufuga, in the land of Sangaunga, Le Ngafa o Le Whalupenga o Sangaunga, the landowner is Samoan Tafa, is the High Chief of Apia, but we are the descendants of Sa Malietoa, and we own the land in which the Pulenuu is Samoan Tafa. But that's our land as well, as from the Maota Boesi of the Sa Malietoa family. So that's our land. Even though you would say Samoan Tafa Leafionga, Samoan Tafa, but it's the Sa Tuli Tufuga's land. That is all ours. So if you look at the police station, the Samoan headquarters of the Samoan police station, and the fire department, and behind Otto's Reef, right through Vaisingana River, that's all the Samoan Tafa and the Sa Tuli Tufuga family land, and we all still live there. That's all our family, our extended families. That is our land. So when the New Zealand troops landed in 1914, you landed on our land. You invaded us. And we were the first line of defense to defend our country. And we had nothing except for nifo'oti and few rocks and stones, and somebody could do a Samoan war dance. And apart from that, we had no answer to a Lee Enfield 303 rifle in which the New Zealand military had arrived on our shore in Apia Beach in 1914. So, bringing us back to AUKUS and the reminder of British colonial imperialism and the Great War in which we were invaded in 1914. You landed on my land and you had invaded my ancestral land of Apia, and that is the reason why I am very passionate with my political views as a student of politics. I graduated with political science and public policy degree in Victoria University of Wellington, and I continue with my Bachelor of Arts in Government at the University of Queensland here in Brisbane, and subsequently I have not been able to utilise any of my qualifications apart from my pro bono broadcasts on YouTube. And I do acknowledge the arrival and the very good address regarding the AUKUS and the directions of Samoa with their international relations moving forward into the future. And as a descendant of Samoa Maile Maota Boesi, it is very important for me to see the destiny of my country, my ancestral country, and my ancestral land of where I came from, and see how my family in Samoa will see their destiny moving forward, either whether they move with BRICS or they move with AUKUS. Presently, AUKUS is seen like an antiphony, as an anathema of a waning British Empire. And as we see BRICS moving forward, we will probably see the new world order coming to the region. Whilst I am very concerned with the present situation, yesterday there was a retaliatory strike by the US F-15 fighter sorties in Syria, which may signal an escalation of the Middle Eastern conflict with Iran. Now, I must remind you that last week, Russia, Iran, and China had conducted joint naval military exercises in the Persian Gulf. That was last week. 2 days ago, the Iranian drone had a suicide drone, Shahed, I presume it is a Shahed suicide drone, had struck a US base within Syria, sparking a retaliatory strike by the US F-15, which was scrambled to execute a military operation to strike the Iranian Republican Guard's positions within Syria. Now, with regards to BRICS, Iran has applied for their membership in BRICS, as well as Turkey. Now, Turkey is a crucial country of some importance with regards to the geopolitical winds of change. There seems to be a high probability that Turkey may join BRICS, and in doing so may jeopardize their membership within NATO, and they may be ousted from NATO. But that's pretty dangerous, because Turkey is actually the most powerful military power within NATO. It's more powerful than Germany, France, and Great Britain in military strength. When you exclude Turkey, and it's a Muslim country and a laicist country, then you will weaken NATO even further. Now, Turkey is about to join BRICS, and they have very favourable bilateral relations, economic and also friendly nations relations with Russia, as well as China. So Turkey may not partake in this escalations of conflicts between Iran and the USA yesterday and today. So we have the reverberations of a potential escalations of the conflicts in the Middle East that may escalate World War III. Now, Iran is applying for BRICS, BRICS Plus. Turkey is applying for BRICS Plus. Other countries in the Southeast Asia, South America, Africa, and Asia are potentially joining BRICS Plus, which is the antithesis to the EU, Western markets, and the EU and US-led Western banking sectors and the economic system that is led by the United States capitalist system, which is being considered under strain, with the likelihood that the BRICS member nations may become very strong after the Ukrainian war. The Ukrainian war overall has signaled the weakness and the fragility of the American hegemonic leadership. This American hegemonic leadership was also signaled as being rather fragile when on January the 6th, 2021, the insurrection in Capitol Hill signaled the fragility and the weakness of American democracy in the eyes of the world. When the world saw the fragility of American democracy, that inadvertently gave a green light for Russia to conduct their special military operation in Ukraine. You can almost attribute that casus belli, or raison d'etre, to the events of the MAGA, Make America Great Again, political insurrection on January the 6th, 2021. That was dangerous. Now that set a whole cascade of events that occurred in even other countries that actually copied it. Now that may be in turn considered as a response to what happened in 2014 in the Euromaidan revolution in Kiev and elsewhere within Ukraine that led to the usurpation of the Kiev Rada regime of President Yanukovych, whom had exiled himself via the Donetsk People's Republic into Russia. He's still presently there. Now, when you see these world events and how it impinges upon Pacific politics, you can join the dots and you can see that it's the post-colonial degradations of the Anglo-American world order as we've known since the end of World War II. Now, mind you, you've got to remember that the other half of World War II was the actions of the Russians. Russia entered Berlin in 1945, and when the Russians arrived, Adolf Hitler committed suicide in the bunker. Now, when he did so, that was simply because the Russians had arrived. He wanted the British to arrive first, the British and Americans, but the Russians beat them to Berlin. So the Russians are the other half of the victors, and hence Russia became a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council subsequently and consequently. And the United Nations would not be the United Nations organization if it wasn't for Russia. So on that note, I will end this discussion. Welcome to Australia, Lowa Fionga Mataafa, Fiame Naomi Mataafa. I hope you enjoy your visit and you have a safe return to my ancestral homeland, our ancestral homeland of Samoa. Ia manuia, so forth.